Just have a special announcement for my listeners. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for listening. Started off as an experiment in August, but I've had about 2,000 listens of my podcasts, and I'm so grateful. I have a special request for my year-end episode 2020, which has been an incredibly interesting year. I plan to do an episode of listener feedback. So what I'd love for you to do is leave me a message, and the link is in the show note, about what you took away. What was one thing after listening to several episodes was the most impactful to you, that helped you in some way, or was an insight you hadn't thought about before? If you can do that, then I will be sharing some of those insights. You can see that link in show notes. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Navigating Disruption podcast. I'm your host, Shaquille Barmel. I'm the CEO of Ocean Blue Strategic and partner with the Summit Group. I'm a coach, consultant, and speaker, and I help leaders, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals make an impact through improved performance. In this podcast, I share insights and interviews with interesting leaders to define practical lessons that you can use to make an impact in the face of uncertainty. I almost called this episode Joy, because that's what I feel every time I listen to it. I worked with Victoria on a brief project 8 years ago and realized pretty quickly that she was a special human being. Victoria Porter Cramer is now the president of Lodging Dynamics Hospitality Group, an operator of Marriott and Hilton hotels in the US. We talk about what she has learned from battling cancer twice, the first time as a new mom to 8-month-old twins, training for mountain bike racing competitions, and running an organization in an industry so severely impacted by the pandemic. As the author of the book, Living Life Loudly, How Will You Face Your Speed Bump?, she shares some very practical tips on how to snap yourself into resilience. Enjoy the conversation. Victoria, how are you?
Hi, my sweet friend. I love seeing that face.
Oh, so good to talk to you. I think the last time we were physically together present was in Berlin, right? I think that was the last time.
Wow. Wait, how many years ago was that?
That was 2012. I have a photo, which is one of my favorite photos of all time, of you and two of our colleagues in front of the Berlin Wall.
Yep, that was this. Yeah, that was wow. That was 8 years ago. That was before before kids.
Before kids, and were you were married? Were you married?
I was married, but yeah, it was before kids, before cancer, before COVID. Yeah. That was 20 years ago. No, I'm just kidding.
You still look the same, Victoria. I just looked at the picture. You look the same.
You're sweet.
You've been through a lot since then, for sure, which we can talk about a little bit here today, if you're okay with that.
Everyone's been through a lot.
Well, so we were together, just for our listeners, we were together. We both were doing some Salesforce transformation with a large medical device company in Berlin. We worked together to put together the program, traveled throughout the US a little bit, and then we did this big thing in Berlin, which is very exciting, very different times, and just had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun.
And we got to impact a lot of lives, which was fun.
For sure. And in fact, that client stayed on with the Summit Group till today. So that's 8 years later, and that was the first big thing we did with them.
That's right. And I'm still connected with a lot of those people and a lot of those friendships, because I think that was some epic stuff is what we did.
Wow. Well, there's lots to talk about today, because right now you are a CEO of a company in one of the most effective industries from this pandemic, the hospitality industry. So I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about the fact that you've been through, and I know that you're comfortable talking about it, which is why I'm raising it. You've been through a couple of very big health battles in your time. You have two beautiful daughters, and you're living life to the fullest through this pandemic with them, which is remarkable, and love to hear those stories. and just general kind of your views on the future and where do you think we go from here, given your role in leadership in the industry and who you are as a person. All good topics to chat about.
Goodness, yes, that's a whole lot. You're gonna have to help guide me.
We may not make it. We may not make it through, but let's just set the stage. But I do want to go way back into your life, even before I ever knew you. And I've never asked you this question in all our conversations. But is there an experience from your childhood or adolescence that kind of sticks in your memory? I'm sure there's many, but one particular that sticks in your memory, which influences how you lead today?
Well, that's a great question. I can't think of any specific one time.
Okay.
But what I can say is that I feel blessed that I had parents that both were really involved in their communities.
Okay.
So I say their communities because my dad was very engaged and involved in all of Arizona, a lot of different communities from fraternal organizations to state government organizations. So lots of national parks. And my mom was engaged more in the local community in the town that we grew up in. And I feel like their concentrated efforts to make an impact on humanity probably helped shape how I am able to do that more today. So it's not one specific moment, more a collective of habits that I think were ingrained in me from a young age.
Yeah. So they didn't actually teach you the importance of civic engagement, of community engagement, of giving back. You just observed it.
I observed it, and because of the level that they engaged, and we were always a part of it, right? So when you've got kids, if you're at any kind of community event, you're bringing them with you. So we were naturally a part of it. We would do things with them, and they would do a lot of fundraisers and a lot of community outreach, and we just were automatically a part of that. So it is more than observing, because we certainly did engage, but I wouldn't say it was something that we did by choice, right? A little bit of the kids get dragged along.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize what I was observing and participating then, but now I recognize the value of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of what age you were at when it first kind of clicked that this is something I want to do? I want to live by this example. When was that transition from something my parents did that I got dragged along to wow, this is really important and it's who I want to be?
Well, this is a little embarrassing, but I'm going to say I was pretty selfish for a significant number of years. So I'm going to go with maybe about 10 years ago.
Okay.
It would be in my late 30s and early 40s.
Oh, I was going to say, you mean when you were 16?
Not quite. But I would say it was in my late 30s. It was when I really started to realize that whether I wanted to be a leader or not, that was part of my DNA. It's who I was meant to be. And I think I avoided it for a long time. But then when I became a leader and started to observe what mattered most to me as a leader was how to take care of the people around me. And how could I do that if I wasn't constantly challenging them to take care of the people around them, whatever that looked like? And so it was the movement or shift from me being an individual contributor at some point to really realizing the impact that I have as a leader, as a mentor, a coach, a guru, all the different lives in the different realms that I touch. And as I started to realize that was probably when it hit me. Wait a minute, this is actually part of me because I was raised in this atmosphere. So it didn't hit for quite a while.
Interesting. Well, so you actually spent a lot of time working in the hospitality industry, kind of coming up through the ranks. I remember you telling me a story of working front desk.
Yeah, when I was 15 years old.
Right. You were so very young. I mean, like me, I started off working at my dad's gas station.
Exactly.
A front line kind of thing. So you go from that, you climb the ranks, you end up getting executive roles in business development and sales in some big brands. Which are some of the companies that you worked for?
So Marriott was most of my career, almost 20 years. And then I branched out to Choice Hotels to learn completely different dynamic of owners, completely different brands, and also learn how to launch a brand effectively, and then to really work on sales transformation, because
Mhm.
that organization at the time didn't really have sales. It had an intermediary marketing organization, but very disjointed globally. And so this global company was in huge disarray when it came to a big revenue opportunity.
Mhm.
So I went to them to go work on launch of a transformation to actually achieve having a global sales
Wow.
organization for a global company. Yeah.
How
It was,
many people? How many people was that? How many people in the global sales organization?
once we revamped it, we had 35. Well, no, I'm sorry, that would be North America. So it was probably closer to 75 or
Okay.
80 when
Yeah.
I looked at the whole globe. And then it grew from there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Biggest lesson you took away from that whole experience of building and transforming a sales organization?
Don't get involved in the IT aspect. No, I'm just kidding. I learned what I'm terrible at. Yeah, I learned very quickly how to rely on subject matter experts
Yeah.
and consultants when it came to some of the dark spots that I would go blind staring at, going, how am I going to launch this piece or this? How am I going to launch this technology and get all these systems globally to work together? And so I think that was probably the hardest. The people part was the fun part.
That
I
was the
would
stuff that
say,
came naturally to you.
yeah,
The stuff
the
that came naturally
technology
to you.
was the hardest part.
Well, that raises an interesting point that I want to delve in just a little bit. Is you were strong on the people part. You knew you could make that happen. You were struggling with more of the technical aspects of the IT, but you recognized that was really important part of this transformation. Uh, what was it like for you to kind of admit both to yourself and then out loud to others that, look, you're going to need some help here?
Well, pride's a hard thing, but I'll tell you what, I think that as long as you're constantly a learner mindset, you recognize that part of having that mindset is the ability to fail,
Right.
or the ability to recognize weakness in yourself. And I learned that one early on. I had a tremendous mentor who actually works for me today, but he was a regional director for me at Marriott. And he said, you've got to learn a lot about your personality type. And we use the Enneagram to really talk through what is my personality type and what are the drawbacks to that are going to cause me to have some pitfalls moving forward. And because I learned that when I was only, I don't know, 25,
Right. Wow.
I felt very comfortable at that point, admitting to my weaknesses and to my obstacles, and then saying, help me, what are my blind spots? Because if I can't see them, this is not going to be good. So I actually felt pretty good with being able to admit where I was weak. It's always the ones that, catch you off guard, where you go, darn, I didn't see that coming. That's the harder part to admit the faults. But I would say that for me this time around, when I did that, it was very natural,
Yeah.
because I knew me and detail, not a good thing. Me and strategy and people and leadership, good. But when it comes to detail, keep me out of it. Legal documents, HR concepts, IT, it's not a good idea for me to be in charge of any of that. So surround myself with the right people, and let them flourish is going to be my motto always.
Well, it's interesting because for years, I think the language in companies has always been, you have strengths and weaknesses. How do you develop your weaknesses and get stronger at your weaknesses? But it sounds like, and what you're saying you discovered early on was actually leverage and develop your strengths and find
Yes.
help on your weaknesses.
Absolutely. I fully believe in that. There's no way I'm going to develop this sudden, amazing and immaculate way to be focused on detail and suddenly be able to launch IT strategies. And no, it's not happening. So yeah, I don't think that that's a great idea for me to focus on that. It's
Yeah.
much better for me to keep uplifting people.
Victoria, I also see you as a person with a growth mindset.
Good.
And one of the things that, in the whole field of growth mindset is that people should not think about their limits. So when they come across something that is difficult or hard, or they feel like they're not good at, the answer is no, I can't. It's not I can't do that. It's I can't do that yet.
day. That's
So how
right.
do you reconcile? How do you reconcile that kind of difference in let's not focus on the strengths, let's surround ourselves with people that are good at our strengths, but at the same time, make sure that we don't close ourselves to opportunities to grow and learn? I don't know the answer to that question. It's something I'm struggling with. Any thoughts that you might have?
I don't either, but I can tell you this. Today I had that experience on my bike, and it's about 5 a.m. It's pitch black. I'm riding with all of these riders who are so much stronger than me. And all I keep thinking is, stay with them, stay with them. And then my brain says, no, you're going to have a heart attack. No, stay with them, stay with them. No, they're trying to kill you. And before you know it, my mind is absolutely invading whether or not my body's going to be willing to actually keep up with them. And so I found myself pulling back, and I know I'm not hitting my limits. I'm for sure not pushing that boundary because my mind is limiting me, and I've got to work on that, not only on the bike but sometimes off the bike. And I think there are sometimes that it's easier for me to push my limits or boundaries, and there are other times where physically it's harder. You don't know if you can get through it, and so it's a good practice, mental practice, to try something physical that causes you to actually have to push harder than you've ever pushed. If you can do that, I think you can be successful as well outside of the physical realm. So I don't know. I haven't solved for it yet, but when I do, I'll let you know.
No, that actually I've never thought about it that way. That's a really interesting perspective, is to develop the growth mindset, start with pushing the physical
Yeah.
capability. And when you prove to yourself the physical is possible,
Mhm.
that actually shows you that, hey, well, maybe the mental is possible too.
Yeah, because it
I,
is mental. Huh?
I think that's pretty cool. I actually never thought about that. And if I unravel my experience,
Yeah.
that's probably the case for me as well. When a couple of years ago, when I was on a journey of mine, I wanted to get in shape, and
Mhm.
I started running after many years, and I was able to push myself further, and that pushing myself further at the same time, I was developing some new skills, like intellectual skills, and I
Yep.
actually never put the two together. But now that you do that, it makes
Yeah.
so much sense.
They're so correlated. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you can look at this team of racers that I race with, and they are all wildly successful off the bike,
Yeah.
and they are all. How does the same group of people, all of them, are excellent and excel and the best in class athletes? How do they do that? But you look, and it's got all aspects of their life are that way. So
Right.
it's not like they're just successful and lucky. It's not about luck. It's for sure about determination. It's about the mind being able to push past that boundary. I think there's a huge correlation.
Amazing, amazing. So you actually, after a long career in hospitality, Marriott, and then Choice, you actually chose to leave and
Mhm.
you started doing some things on your own. What was that about? The you were doing some coaching and some mentoring and some speaking, right?
Yeah, I would say that the shift happened when I realized after about almost 25 years in the industry that it was time for me to broaden my horizons.
Mhm.
And so it was fun for me to start my own company, to start to grow my own brand identity, learn what the best do differently out there in other industries, not just the hospitality space. And to be able to work with companies like Abbott Labs and Microsoft and Cisco Systems and Medtronic, just some really incredible companies, and to see the innovation that exists
Mhm.
and the creativity, the compassion. There were so many aspects of the last eight. I've still got the company, my own company, and I have enjoyed the last 8 years of this journey
Mhm.
of reshaping and remolding for me. I would say a more fully rounded perspective
Mhm.
of what people are doing differently out there. And along the way, I've met some incredible leaders and gotten the opportunity to help write speeches for several people and do some speaking engagements and all the things that you've been doing as well. So I think it's been incredibly rewarding. And then when I got to fall back into the hotel industry by accident
Yeah.
3 years ago, what a blessing.
Right.
I hadn't realized how much I missed it.
Mhm.
And I said there was really no need for me to go back because it wasn't going to give me a growth edge. But little did I know COVID was going to hit and I'd get plenty of growth opportunities. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
it's
So you're
great.
so you are now. Tell us about what you're doing right now.
in the
So
industry?
now, as the president of Lodging Dynamics Hospitality Group, I oversee an organization that manages hotels, and we manage specifically Marriott and Hilton hotels.
Okay.
Those are really what our wheelhouse is. We'll also manage Hyatt hotels, but we manage right now about 21 hotels, and we have a huge growth trajectory. And we would like to be managing upwards of 50 hotels within the next 3 years. So we're working hard at that, and not very many companies are working towards that today, as you can
Right.
imagine.
Yeah.
There are a lot going, why am I still in this space? How do I get out of this space? Do I really want to be managing hotels today? But I've got an incredible team, and we've weathered the storm
Yeah.
better than most, and I'm really proud of them.
So in that first, because I happened to be talking to you around the time we were going to work together on something around the time that this all happened.
That's right.
Tell me about the first 3 months. What occupied your mind and your time in that first 3 months after the pandemic was declared?
Wow, that was awful. Can I
Mhm.
just say that was awful? But
Yeah.
I say that about chemo and I say that about radiation. That was awful.
Yeah.
But it sure did grow me as a human. I think it grew me as a leader. I think it grew me as a human. I feel like the first 3 months I didn't sleep. I had just accepted the position of president
Right.
and took this promotion. And 1 week later, I go from having about 800 employees to furloughing over three-quarters of them.
Wow.
And that was painful. That was why I got out of the hotel industry in the first place. Was I despised layoffs. They were painful, awful, made me feel like a horrible human being. So here I had to go through all of that, only even worse. I'm telling them, you've done nothing wrong, but we just can't keep you right now. We have no open hotels. They're all being shut down. So very painful. Even harder was not knowing when we could bring them back or how we were going to be able to bring them back, because you didn't have any idea what the future was going to be week by week. And so we were making adjustments quickly. And then I also found myself in a place I hadn't been before. I'd never had to try and figure out PPP loans
Right.
um, and how does insurance work, and what are all these HR implications, and what does it mean for the furloughed employees, and how do we address benefits? I mean, it was just a barrage of
Yeah.
unanswered questions
Yeah.
and a really new territory for me. So I relied heavily on the leaders around me to help bring forward the best knowledge they could, considering a lot of it was unfolding and changing every single day.
Mhm.
So every day, we literally, as leaders, we were on the phone talking to say, okay, where are we at? Oh, this hotel now wants, the county wants to close it. Okay, well, what does that do to our loan situation and agreement? Do we accept a fine from the county because it makes the loan safer? Or what do we, I mean, so many moving
Wow.
parts. And then how do you communicate that with the brands and say, okay, now what does Marriott need from us? What does Hilton need from us? And oftentimes we were ahead of what they could do. They're such big ships that they were trying to create policies, but there were times where we had to shut down before they could even design what a policy or procedure would look like.
Right.
So we were ahead of that and having to rewrite the world. I mean, having to rewrite the guest experience.
Right.
We had to do that because our hotels started to fill up with everyone's kids being out of school. Everyone started taking vacations to all the major parks, and all of our hotels that were in park destinations or in leisure markets became very full very fast.
Wow.
But yet we didn't have rules or regulations or mandates or even suppliers figured out from the major chains.
Right.
Marriott hadn't figured it out, Hilton hadn't figured it out. So we had to quickly get all of our subject matter leaders together and say, how do we rewrite the way that the guest experience goes down? And then what do we need to do to get supplies? I mean, how do we even get hand sanitizer when you couldn't get it?
Yeah.
What are we going to do for these guests that come in with no masks? And let's figure out how you can clean a room effectively to keep our employees safe and our guests safe. So we figured all of that out ahead of the big chains because we had to, out of
Because
necessity.
you're operators. You're
Yeah.
you're on the front lines. Yeah.
So you would think we would be a little bit bored, but no, that is not how it went down. It was sheer chaos, major hours, lots and lots of conversations and innovating, pioneering, being super ultra creative, and also trying to give new guest experiences by listening and truly hearing what do people need out there. And I was one of them. Had my husband working at home, had my kids at home, and I'm trying to work at home. And I'm like, I just need a place to go, but I can't go to a coffee shop. Where can I go? A hotel. They've
Yeah.
got plenty of rooms.
Yeah.
So, so kind of getting creative ahead of time to figure out what are people's family needs right now, and can we help with that?
Right.
So it was a lot. I'm not going to lie, it was a lot, and it was incredible,
Um,
incredible to see how many people came together to uplift human dignity and to think about how do we make humanity better, from and shape the new experience for an employee and shape the new experience for a guest. And then how do we also do outreach to owners to really be able to listen to their pain points and help them through it,
yeah.
even though it's space we hadn't been in before. So
Right.
it was,
Wow. Wow. I mean, it
that
really was
helps.
an example. No, that was wonderful how you told that story. I mean, it really was an example of, and is still an example, I guess, of how the worst of times brings out the best of us,
I
uh,
think it does.
both
Yeah.
as human beings, but also intellectually and creatively. I've been watching and talking to a lot of people, and it's almost like this crisis hit, and there's a group of people that were in this extreme of becoming more innovative, more creative, faster thinkers. And then there was a group of people that had to go the other end and say, it's going to be over. I'm just going to hunker down and
Yeah.
slow down and just wait for it all to come back. And then there was a bunch of people in the middle. And I often think that it's those bunch of people in the middle that if you can work on them and spark them and keep them inspired, that it'll pull forward the ones that are in the anxious state and waiting and hunkering down.
Yep.
But it'll also be great fuel to keep the energy of those top people that are creative, keep them
Mhm.
going a little bit. Did you see that?
Yeah, I absolutely saw that. I saw it. I've seen it a lot of times in life, but when you're going through anything that's a painful journey, I have a good friend who said, "No one gets off a comfortable couch."
Right.
So you either got to make the couch uncomfortable, sell the couch, or it becomes uncomfortable over time. Well, in our case, the couch got really uncomfortable. In fact, I think it was thrown out the window. And so you had people who would stand there and stare at where the couch should be and be like, what do I do? And you would have others that would be like, I don't need to stand still. I'm going to take the best and make it the most. And they're just much more resilient. And so, yes, they would pull along the ones that were sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
People who don't have the ability to adjust and modify and be resilient, they're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's just part of human nature. And there are some people like that had to just get out of the hotel industry completely. And I get that. I don't judge them for it. It's a painful place to be. You have to be a very giving and innovative person to be in the space today. And we even had some leaders who were like, we don't care if you have to give us a pay cut. We don't care if we don't even get to make a dime for the next 3 months. What can we do to help? How do we jump in and help? That's a pretty powerful statement. And then there were others that were very much, I've got to make a living, so I'm out. Got it. No worries. So I think you saw, like you described, kind of the whole spectrum. Yep.
Wow. And so, are there things that you experienced or saw in your team, in yourself, and the way you run the organization that came up as new capabilities that you want to now pull forward into the new normal? Has that happened?
That's a great question. Yes. Well, not so much a change in my leadership style, but I would say a change in the industry. So I I feel guilty saying I'm doing great when someone asks me, how are you doing? And I say I'm doing great during a COVID year, right? A lot of guilt there. Um, I also feel guilty saying our industry as a whole needed this to happen. It needed to be shaken up. I've been saying for a long time that we've got to create a better equilibrium, and more efficiencies in the industry and more innovation and creativity. And we've got to have a lot more compassion. And I know it sounds weird, but in the hotel space, I wouldn't say that you see a lot of compassion towards associates or employees,
Mm,
a lot towards guests, but maybe not a lot towards the employees, even though you hear everyone say that's what we should do. You got to take care of your employees and they'll take care of the guests.
yeah.
I wouldn't say that that's necessarily been the case for the last couple decades. It's been a workaholic um, industry
Mhm.
where all that's done is you take a person and you say, you're going to essentially do these three jobs, the three humans worth of work, and see if you can pull that off in 70 or 80 hours a week. And oh, would you also move and relocate to our corporate offices for no other reason than so we can see your face? That's all dated. It's vanilla. It is not innovative. It's not inspiring or creative. And so I think for the first time in at least the last couple of decades, this has forced a shakeup. It's forced people to have to say, no, 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 I'm not coming into that office. COVID, hello.
Yeah.
And then for people to say, wait a minute, you're right. I don't need you to. Let's use Zoom. Let's be more creative. I would say that it hasn't changed my leadership style. My leadership style has continued to be a bit more innovative and a lot more on the compassionate side of uplifting human dignity, finding the right leader no matter where they live. I don't care where they sit geographically, as long as they can talk and they can do so over technology, we can make it work. I
Yeah.
want their leadership and not necessarily where they live and they don't need to relocate. I want them to be happy. I
Yeah.
want them to have a lot of passion around their home life. And
Yeah.
if they can do that and live somewhere else, then they could be successful. So we've done a lot with creativity and hired salespeople that don't even live in the same city for the hotels that they're going to be filling up.
Yeah.
A lot of leaders that we've brought on board, they don't physically live anywhere near our corporate offices. I don't.
Yeah.
And we champion that. So I would say the only thing I've done differently is to expand that and be more vocal about it. But it's actually been a really refreshing shakeup in the industry because we're now not the only company doing it. We may have been a pioneer of doing that, but now you're seeing many more management companies feel the same way, or
Mhm.
even corporate offices that still aren't open today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. That's great. Wonderful, wonderful analysis. And I think you're right. Not just the hospitality industry, but kind of corporations in general have had that awakening and shake up, and some won't go back.
Yeah.
So there'll be some hybrids. There'll be some. I mean, even our industry, the training and coaching industry, like
Yeah.
it was all live all the
It
time,
was.
uh,
Yeah.
and I used to love it, and it was always a great experience. But now that we're doing so much of it virtually, it's a lot more work for
Yeah.
sure. A lot more work. Yeah, you're not getting on planes, but the amount of detailed planning that needs to go into a virtual experience is really significant. But then at the same time, I find the learning outcomes better because you do shorter sessions.
Okay. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
gives people time to reflect and do some work and then come
Yep.
back for another short sessions. And maybe a program you would have done in one day, you do over the span of several weeks, which
That's
is
right.
much more time for reflection and learning. So there are definitely some good things that come out of it. And
I think you're right. And I would say the same thing's happening anytime we bring on a new person in our company. In
yeah,
the past, you might have tried to cram their onboarding into 1 week.
yeah,
And now you're spreading it out over time. So you're right. They have time to digest what they just experienced through a 2 hour webinar and then put it into action, and then they get the next session and the next session. So you're right. I think it actually has caused some of that same challenge or change to happen, even when you onboard somebody new. So that makes a lot of sense.
yeah. No, that's great. So going forward, and you were right. There's no way we can cover everything that I laid out at the beginning of the
Yeah.
session. We can't get there. But I do want to just tell you how inspired I have been by the way you've battled cancer twice.
Yeah.
And you've been very generous and open in sharing your journey and experience.
Thank you.
Um, can I ask you why you did that? Why?
Yeah.
What made you be so open in sharing? I mean, not only as you went through it,
Yeah.
but you wrote a book about it. So
Yeah.
tell me what motivated you to do that.
So the very first go around, when you're blindsided, you start to take stock in, well, at least for me, I took stock in okay, I don't have a choice about this, but what I do have control over is how I face this journey. So I can't take it away. I can't make it go away, but I can adjust my attitude towards it. And what am I going to do about it? How am I going to show up? And what I had decided was is that showing up with humility, inspiration, and even I'm going to be facing doctors and nurses every day. I don't want to make their job miserable. So I
Mm,
want to have it be something where there's a lot of humor and tenacity involved and give them a better experience for me as a patient. So once I set that in my mind and I realized that that's how I was going to face the journey, it was pretty easy for me. I say that.
mm,
It
yeah.
was pretty easy for me to go through this awful, awful, horrible, hard journey. But I put a wall up. So my first battle with cancer, I put a wall up, and all I kept thinking was, "That's fine. This is going to be about 18 months worth of a journey." And I didn't even think of it as a journey. I thought of it as a check the boxes exercise.
Mm.
Chemo, hard chemo rounds, 1 through 4 done. Hard chemo rounds 6 through 9 done. Whatever.
And that
Light chemo,
represented itself in your posts, because I remember you were kind of reporting to
like
us your
next,
your process. Yeah.
right? I'd be like, "Yay! I've only got 1 more round of chemo to go, and then I'll be done with this." Well, what I think our dear friend Phil Sterland realized was that I was not seeing it as a journey. I was seeing it as a race, a start to finish race. And yeah, it was a marathon, and I was really hoping kind of for a sprint, but that's fine. To me, it was still a race. I was going to get to the finish line, and I knew I was going to get there. But I had put my wall up to protect the people around me
Mm,
from pain or from seeing any pain in me. And for the sake of my kids, I didn't want my infant daughters to have any memories of their mom being sick, right? So
mm,
part of it was for my husband, my daughters, my friends, and family. And I put a wall up, and I didn't shed a tear.
mhm.
I was solid. I raced hard. I fought hard. I continued to keep moving, and Phil flew to Arizona and met with me for lunch. And he said, "So whether you wanted it or not, you've now got the equivalent of a PhD in resilience. What are you going to do with it?" And
Wow.
at the time, I think my response was something snarky like, "Put it behind me." It's just like, how fast can I get this shit over with? Right.
Yeah,
So I'm like, when am I going to be done? And then he says, "Okay, you could do that, or you could help other people with it." But I'm just saying that. And it's stuck in my brain. I'm like, what would I do? I really want to talk through this and go through it again and again and again? I can't imagine. I just think I want to put it behind me. But what I realized was he was right. The leader in me knew that there were going to be people that would need me. There would be people that would go through what I had been through, and maybe I could help them be more resilient, or maybe help them have a little less pain and a little less anxiety if I shared my story. But I thought, I know there are a lot of people that have written breast cancer books. So instead, I'm going to write a book about resilience and about the strategies and tactics that I had to employ to be resilient. And that was the twist that caused me to go, okay, I've got something to write about. So I'd never written a book before, went down that path. It was a blast. It was, again, a growth edge I had never experienced before and got a chance to really learn. Um, and then apparently I hadn't learned enough because I had to get breast cancer again.
yeah.
So I just finished, was pretty excited. I had been about 9 months kind of cancer free, if you will, and get hit with it again. Well, I decided to ask my network, "What do you want from me this time around?
Hmm.
What did you get from me the first time? Because guess what? Whether we want to be on this journey or not, we're going on it again. So what do you need from me?" And the overwhelming response was, "We want you to be real. Last time around, you were too perfect. We know there was a whole lot more pain that was happening," and they were right. So
Okay. I'm sorry, Victoria, I have to stop you there because I just want to process this for a second.
yeah.
One of our friends asked you a question after your first battle with cancer. You've gone through this. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to help people?
Hmm.
You get it again. And instead of focusing on, oh my God, I got it again. I can't believe this. I just went through that. you immediately ask your network, what
Mhm.
can I do for you? How can I make this journey of mine that I
Yeah.
have to go through again? What can I do for you during this time?
Mhm.
That is remarkable, Victoria. That's remarkable.
Part of the reason why I had to ask that question was because I recognized on the first go around that I felt better when I did for other people. You forget about your pain, you forget about your anguish
Mm.
when you set it aside, even for a day or a moment. Just helping a lady get groceries into her car, or buying a homeless person a cup of coffee, whatever that looks like, even helping someone for a moment, you forget about the pain, the nauseousness, the fear, the anxiety, all of those dark emotions disappear when you do something for someone else. So I knew that. And I thought to myself, well, what do these people around me need? Because if they're going to be my team again, I don't want to be going through this again. They can't want to be going through this again. So let's see if we can make it better for them. So, yeah, that was my question.
I love it. So that is now my answer to the question when people ask me, how am I going to get through this time, no matter what that time is?
Yep.
And the answer to that question is stop focusing on yourself and start focusing on how you're going to give. And
Yep.
in that act of giving, you are boosting yourself and helping yourself get through it.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah.
I'm a person of faith, and I just think a lot about the grand design, and what a remarkable kind of subroutine that God planted in us to find one day that when
Yeah.
you're having a difficult time, check this program that says help other people. The
Other
harder
people.
time you're having, help more people.
That it works.
It
It
works.
works, and it's been working through COVID. You look at the people who have reached out and helped their neighbors. You look at the people who, like, even in our hotel industry, I have goosebumps literally every day. I couldn't even tell you the stories because there are too many of them, of people doing more for other people, and they're getting through COVID in a much more resilient way. And it is stressful. This is awful. People are guzzling gallons of alcohol.
Yeah,
It's hard, but every time I see someone helping someone else, that person's much happier through this whole journey.
absolutely.
It
Absolutely.
matters.
It seems like common sense when you say it that way, but it's amazing how I would say 50% of the population forgets it, and the other 50% is the one that kind of makes it through and pulls us through. Look, we've been chatting here. I could keep talking to you all day. I know you have an organization to run, and probably a race to do soon. I don't know.
Saturday.
Saturday, of course, I knew you would. We haven't even touched that hobby of yours. But in closing, two questions. One is, if people want to learn more about you, find your book, where do they go?
Okay, so the book is called Living Life Loudly: How Will You Face Your Speed Bump? And my name is Victoria Porter Cramer, and Cramer, Cramer. And you can go find it right on Amazon. That's the easiest way. And if there's anybody that wants me to send someone a book or autograph a book, I can do that too. And they can just message me. So you can also find me on Instagram, Living Life Loudly, on Facebook, Victoria Porter Cramer, or on LinkedIn, Victoria Porter Cramer. Those are all great ways to find me. So hopefully that helps.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you'll get some inquiries based on this conversation. I also just want to ask you if you had one thing to say to the leaders that are listening, um, what advice would you give them to face the next few years?
Wow, that's a one, huh? Okay, so I'm gonna have to go with two because
Okay,
there's
fine.
two aspects. So the first one is, please, 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 get yourselves the balance and the inspiration internally that will allow you to give externally. So invest in your health, invest in physical exercise. If you can't do physical exercise, you just are not capable, because there are some people that can't, then some kind of outdoor activity or exercise that will allow your brain to open up and be expanded. I think people are more capable of being innovative, compassionate leaders if they focus on themselves for a moment and give to themselves physically. Don't keep yourself locked indoors unless you have to. Try to get outside, try to take a walk, try to garden, try to do yoga, whatever that looks like to you. Movement, I guess, is the better word. People will say, Victoria, I can't exercise like you. You're insane. Well, yeah, I am partially insane, but I'm not asking that. What I'm saying is move. Get yourself into a new space, try and sit in a new place, trying to sit and observe the outdoors, or move. And if you can, every single day, I don't mean 4 or 5 days a week, I mean every day. People will say, but you need a rest day. Really? If you move for an hour a day, aren't you resting 23 hours in that day? I'm sorry, but that's not too much to ask to say 1 hour a day every day. So not 3 days a week, not 4. I'm talking 7 days a week. Move. If you can do that and invest in yourself, I think you'll see that as a leader, you can give back more because your brain is on fire then. You've got so much more passion, compassion, and innovation, and the ability to learn and interest to learn, that I think until you can do that and give to yourself, you can't do the next step, which is to give back to the people. As leaders, give back to the people around you and have them do the same thing. Encourage in any way, shape, or form, even if it's at 10 a.m. in the middle of a work day, exercise and movement, whatever that looks like, to help them to be able to create this more efficient, more energized lifestyle, I think will probably lead to more innovations, more pioneering, more creativity, and it'll keep on snowballing. So there's my 2 pieces of advice.
I love it.
Yourself and then give back.
I love it. What a great kind of model, which is give to yourself physically,
Yep.
which contributes to yourself emotionally and mentally, and then give to others in service and emotionally. And that combination, cocktail, if you will, actually becomes a perpetual motion machine if you can strike the balance.
That's exactly right.
What a gift, Victoria.
I love my time with you. You always make me light up.
Me too. I can't wait. What I typically do is I do these interviews and then I listen to them again when I'm on a run and I start processing. So I can't wait till tomorrow morning where I get to re-listen to this conversation.
Well, then I should have started it off with, hi, Shaquille, run faster.
Awesome. Well, there it is. The last 5 seconds of my run will be really fast because I'll hear that.
I love it. Thank you
so much. I can't wait to see you again.
Me too. I miss you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Now you know why I wanted to call that episode Joy. So much to take away from that conversation. We talked a lot about how crisis and chaos can spark incredible innovation if you watch and listen to how it's affecting people and then are creative with what you learn to change things for the better. She said one of the positive things that has come out of this crisis in the hospitality industry is the recognition of caring as much for your employees as you do for your guests. She said that the industry has generally taken people for granted and pushes them pretty hard, but this pandemic has made them stop and recognize how important it is to look after them. She emphasized how important it is when faced with a crisis or personal challenge to think about how you want to show up to the people around you. She said, think about how important it is to care for those that care for you. Victoria talked about how you see a crisis. She said you can see a crisis as a race, as something to grit your teeth and get through. Or you can see it as a journey and an opportunity to grow and give to others. She said she's tried both ways, and the latter is much better. And finally, my favorite part of this whole episode came at the end, where she gave us tips to trigger your resilience, a shortcut or like a 1-2 punch. So, step 1, when facing a difficult situation, move physically, walk, do intense exercise if you can, but if you can't, just move. And second, that will stimulate your mental resilience. And once you have that, you then start giving to others. You help others. You share with others. You engage others. And that combination of physical movement and giving to others will actually help you build your resilience to get through the difficult time. I hope that helps you and you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Have a great day. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, or share it. I want to say thank you to one of my favorite bands, Late Night Conversations, for sharing their song Chaos with me and letting me use it in this episode. You can learn more about them on Instagram at LNC Connected. And here's more of their song Chaos to take you out.
Far behind my eyes, mediation, suffocation, it'll break me. Information in disguise. But when your eyes finally found mine, you were there, but I'm defined by the chaos in my mind. I believe what I perceive is a weave tearing at the seams, and I wonder what's behind. And my ears are bleeding, and the reason isn't the logic of the season, taking the pleasing from my soul and leaving me to die. And I feel the lacing, LNC like racing, unstationary animation taking me from the